Welcome everyone to the first episode of Black Meditations with Dr. Caesar. This episode is called The Art of Storytelling. And we are so excited to have these beautiful ladies who will be sharing their particular love for this particular art today on Black Meditations. So first, I kind of want to just use this time to let you all know, like, what is Black Meditations? And I look at Black Meditations as I guess you can say it's a way that I'm sharing hope through Black culture. And that's a short form of it. During this particular time, we're having so much stuff that's happening with COVID-19. We have these ongoing racial tensions and other things that are happening in the world, that I really wanted to create something that would heal and add some positivity to the Black community. And so that's exactly what the art of storytelling is about, and the Black Meditations is about. But in a kind of concise form, the Black Meditations is basically an online series of Black leaders, artists, and scholars who are using their work to heal the world. And so I guess you will want to know, why are we starting with Storytellers? And I have a series of questions that I want to kind of share with you all. If you see me looking down, I have an additional phone that I'm using to kind of help me stay on task. When we think of storytelling, these are some of the questions I think of. Who collects the stories of the people and tell them back to the world and the generations to come? Who keeps the legacy of the Black community preserved? Who holds the key of ancient healing and the remedies if someone forgets? How do we remember? The Black storyteller is very, very much so important today as it was in the past. In ancient West African tradition, they called it the griot, and the griot was a sacred position, tasked with the duty of preserving the history through song and dance, and also remembering years and years of data. And these particular legacies of the griot, their goal was to inspire, but also to ignite change. And what I wanted to say is that the storyteller griot is not just a cultural legacy, it's a political legacy, it's a political position that is very important to the culture. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a clear understanding of these wonderful ladies and how they are participating in a sacred tradition, one that is cultural as well as political. I would like to take the time to introduce our first two guests who are launching this particular series. We have Ms. Sheryl Pryor as well as Ms. Mary Grant. Ms. Sheryl Pryor, she has a storytelling name that is Maddie Ami. And she says that she is a teacher, a writer, and a storyteller. And she enjoys telling stories about all genres and to all groups and all ages. But she truly loves telling cultural stories, especially to children. She has stories that she tells to her young students. She tells stories to people at the campfire. And also, as a trainer, an educational trainer, she uses stories as a tool to educate and inspire and motivate. In addition, as an educator, she uses stories to help her students learn how to write. What a beautiful thing. She is a member of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers, Detroit Storytellers League, National Association of Black Storytellers, and the Ann Arbor Storytelling Guild. Our next wonderful storyteller is Mary J. Grant. She is an author, educator, and storyteller who devoted her career to educating children As a teacher, supervisor, as well as an administrator, she is reminded that students are the knowledge and they need knowledge, and knowledge is always power. Reading, writing, and learning have always been a passion. And one of her main aims when she writes her story is to educate and make sure that they are culturally ingrained so they can have some type of historical understanding of themselves. She is the author of 4 books, and I believe she's writing another one. So you can look her up and find her books and purchase them. Those books are My Daddy Taught Me to Read, you see, and Floyd B's Pond, Shadows on Sunday, My Special Jar. And learning have always been a passion of hers. And she tries to keep this theme that if you get the series of her book, each of her stories have a character named Man. So I hope that she can tell us about this special character and why this character is there. As a professional storyteller, she has told engaging stories to adults and children all over the United States. She is also a part of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers and the National Association of Black Storytellers and Detroit Story League. So I would like to welcome Miss Sheryl Pryor and Miss Mary Grant to this wonderful conversation as we explore the art of storytelling. So all the people on Facebook who are watching, welcome, welcome, welcome. All the people on Zoom who are watching, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is my first time doing this, so please be patient with me. I do want to let you all know that we have a series of questions that we're going to ask our beautiful storytellers, and then they're going to share their stories, a few examples of their stories at different points. At the end, we will open it up for question and answer. So if my screen blanks out to my picture, it's probably because I'm doing some type of technical thing that I'm trying to figure out. So we're going to just keep this going. I just want to send greetings to the people who are attending, who are inside this Zoom meeting. You can ask questions during the chat. And also, you can even just ask the question because you have the access to share your voice. So if you feel so comfortable at the end, if you have a question or a contribution, please feel free to use your voice or the chat room. So we're going to start, and I just for just culture of the Zoom meeting, if you're not talking, I just ask that you make sure that you mute your microphone so that we can hear everyone clearly. I'm not going to ask you who wants to go first. Whoever wants to speak first on the questions, please feel free to start. All the questions are geared to both Ms. Sheryl Pryor as well as Ms. Mary Grant. And so the first question is, why did you become a storyteller? So either one of you just want to hop on in and just express, why did you become a storyteller? And before you start, just make sure you introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Sheryl Pryor, otherwise known as Mattione. And I became a storyteller probably as a child because I was a voracious reader. And my mother had decided that she needed to guide me to certain readings because I would read anything and everything. And then, of course, I would tell my stories as I interpreted them to, my peers. I'd tell them to my parents, whomever would listen. It didn't matter. And then as a parent, I began to tell stories to my daughter. And often, we would read stories, but as an oral storyteller, which is really what I do, is that I would make up stories. And she told me she liked them better. So of course that made me continue. And then I found that when I was teaching high school, I taught at-risk students. And those at-risk students were having a very difficult time with history. And I decided to tell them stories about history. So I'd make up the characters, which was fine. And then I would tell them the story, and then they would repeat back to me, or they'd ask me questions. And then I, got them involved in telling stories and writing stories. And so I just continued on from that point. And I've been having fun with it ever since.
I have to go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just bought this. I really was a shy and bashful person. Didn't like telling stories. My knees used to shake, but I became a teacher and I had to tell stories. I was a kindergarten teacher and I started reading the stories. I started telling these stories to these children and they didn't want to leave. Their mamas would come and pick them up 10 minutes early. They said, no, we want to hear the story. I said, this is really special. So I continued to tell stories. And then I became an administrator and we had to work with these middle school boys, 32 boys in one class. Some of them were 6'2", and there was like an 8th grade class. I said, well, how in the world am I going to do this? So I was teaching social studies. I dressed up as Sojourner Truth. I walked in there and they looked at me like I was crazy. But anyway, they stopped talking, stopped playing, because they love to play, love to hit each other, do all kinds of things. But when I came in there and told them about Sojourner Truth and then gave them their lesson, they sat quiet and listened to me. I said, oh, this worked. And then they put me in an auditorium because I had to do lunch duty. And I began to recite poetry. I know these certain poems and I would go off and I started saying these poems. I said, oh, this worked. And then I joined the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers. I said, oh, you get paid for this? Okay, I can do that too. I started telling Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, Nina Simone. I did all kinds of stories. I said, this works for me. I love telling stories. Okay. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you all so much. And there is this common theme that I hear between you and Sheryl about your family and how your family encouraged you in this art of storytelling, and also the elders, right? The elders in your family who are preserving this tradition and saying, hey, grandbaby, or hey, daughter, this is something that you can do, and encouraging you along the way. But another thing that I love that gives me chills is that you all are both educators, and both of you all were working with at-risk students to some degree, and you had to find a creative way, listen to me, educators, find a creative way to get the experience and get them excited about learning, and you all use storytelling. And so I just want to say that's wonderful. But the next question is, you all kind of started to talk about it already in your answer, but I just wanted to know if you had anything else that you wanted to add to it. Was, what do you feel like the role is of the Black storyteller griot in the Black community?
Well, I think you answered that initially in the introduction, because you said, it was to inform, to educate, engage. And the ancient griots, or bards as they were called, were responsible for the history. And so in addition to telling that history, you make connections. And when you make connections, people feel that they are a part of the story that you are telling, which is so important, especially when you're talking to children, and you can raise their self-esteem, you give them a history lesson, and it's just a great thing to see a child who says, we did that? Yes, we did. No, it is not just about the slave or being enslaved. It is about the fact that you have a rich and glorious history and culture. And that is one thing that bards, griots, and storytellers, especially oral storytellers, are responsible for doing.
Yeah, because you have to build your community up. At this time and the things that are going on, we must make sure that we put positive messages out there for our people. In terms of the Black community and the kinds of things that we have been subjected to in our community. We have to be strong. We have to you can sometimes tell a story to make a point. And so as a storyteller in the Black community, you must encourage and tell stories to make sure they understand exactly what you're saying.
Thank you so much. I really love those responses. This idea that stories are supposed to help raise the self esteem of the people. These stories are supposed to make one feel proud and wonderful within their skin. Also, it shares this rich and glorious aspect of your history, and it builds the community up. So thank you all for sharing those points. You all both have already kind of hit on it, but I wanted to know if you can just go in just a little deeper on this ideal of building and healing. Right now, in 2020, Black Lives Matter is a movement that's occurring right now as we speak. We have youth, we have elder, we have babies who are marching, trying to end racial injustices. We have people who are dying. How does storytelling provide a healing balm to these current situations?
You know, there was a little cartoon character. They had a police officer sitting on a stool and a little boy sitting next to him. The police officer said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the little boy said, alive. So we have to encourage our children not to be scared, to embrace their emotions and their feelings so that they know that they have a place in this world. You have to talk to them. You have to tell them. You have to explain to them in a story or any way you can that it's okay, that you're going to be what you want to be. Sometimes life has trips and bumps, but you have to maintain your belief in yourself, and you can be what you believe you can be.
Well, and in adding on to what Mary said, our young protesters are out there and they are reciting history. And it's amazing to me. I mean, it's really heartwarming and just makes me feel good that they are studying some portion of it. And all we do, or not all we do, but as a storyteller, an oral storyteller, I want to augment that. And before I say anything else, I want to give kudos to all of those young folks who are out there marching and protesting, because you're doing one fabulous thing. And yes, you may not see many of us who are older or more mature, but you have my support. I believe in you. I support you. Stay focused. And you're doing the right thing, because it is something that's needed. And the only thing that's happening is that, or one of the things that's happening is that history is repeating itself. So if you can create a situation, your story will be told from now on. You are part of history. You are making history. And that is because you believe in you. And that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful, those wonderful words. One thing that I heard was that be alive, that we, despite the challenges that are going on, that we are people that continues to thrive. And so this particular ideal surrounding death, is something that we have to kind of remove from, the space, and embrace this legacy of hope so that we can be alive and thrive. And you all encourage the activists who are right now on the front line and saying that we are here and we support you. Also, this ideal of intergenerational discussion and dialogue that's occurring. I heard some of those particular things as well. And so the art of storytelling is a space. It's a space that allows us to be able to recount these particular things that are happening. So at 20 or 30 years ago, 20 or 30 years later, if someone say what happened in 2020, someone would be able to provide that narrative with song and dance and words and rap music and whatever the culture proceeds. The next question that I have is if you all can tell me a little bit about your creative process. As a storyteller, you see a storyteller, sometimes you say, oh my goodness, it looks easy. But when we see you in front of children, in front of adults, in front of your programs, what are some of the things that are going on in your mind? What is your creative process to writing a story and performing a story?
Well, I would specifically tell more historical stories or stories that are focused on morals and some of my own life experiences or things that I've witnessed. So I usually start with that. And then the other thing is I tell stories about sayings. Uh, for example, a saying that I've always heard from my grandmother was that horses sweat, men perspire, and women glisten. So I wrote a story about that as well. And that's also part of our history. Those are things that your parents, your grandparents, maybe the neighbor, the man on the corner, they might have told you. And they told you those things in an effort to help you grow up and be better or stronger adults and children and to be able to deal with things. So when I'm telling a story, if it's a historical story, I want to base it on facts. But I take that incident, whatever that incident was, and I begin there. And I start writing, whatever my thoughts are. And like any other writing, you write, you rewrite, you write, you say, this is my draft, and you say, oh, no, and you rewrite again until it is right for the audience that you have been selected for. A funny story is that I also do, I guess, impersonations. I've been asked to do things at family reunions. And at the family reunion, they asked me to portray the grandmother or the great-grandmother of an individual. So in order for me to do that, I had to study them. I had to ask the various members of the family, what does she do? How does she act? What does she wear? And that's all part of that research to begin to tell that story. And in that fashion, I was able to present the story, so much so that there was a little boy there and he kept looking at me. And he said, you're not married to my granddaddy, but you sure look a lot like my grandmother. Yeah, you, grandma? And I was like, no, but I took it as a compliment. So that meant that I had done my research and I had done the things that I needed to do to create that story.
Well, when I'm telling stories, I tell other people's stories. Then we have these workshops in Detroit Association of Black Storytellers, where they said, make up your own story. So I closed my eyes and I meditated on my life when I was a child. And I said, oh, and I could remember things that happened. I was sitting on the floor listening to a radio. And I remember that when I was 4 years old. And there were things that happened to me as a child. And I started putting all those things together. I wrote it down and I said, oh, I got a story. Sometimes you hear people say, well, I don't really have a story. I don't tell stories. But if you've ever been to a party, you hear people telling stories all the time. So I began to write these stories down and began to tell my own stories, because we all have stories, but to tell them sometimes it's a little chore. You might have to write it down, but it comes out if you think about it. If you continue to think about it, if you tell it over and over again, it becomes your story. And that's how my creative process is. I meditate, write it down, and repeat it over and over again. And the story embellishes as I go through and becomes my stories. That's how I started writing the little children's books, because I'd meditate and all of a sudden, all these memories would come back in my mind of growing up as a child and the experiences I had. And that's how I start telling my own stories in my own creative process.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I love these particular accounts of how you got into character, right? This idea of research. And so the importance of researching your topics and knowing, so much that to scare family members that they think you really that person, right? And then this, this particular ideal of, hey, I'm thinking of this process, I'm thinking of this story, and then just watching it come to life. So one of the things I just wanted to emphasize, this idea that when you're a storyteller, there is a process. Everybody has their own creative process. It is an art. And so each storyteller has a way that they go about sharing, their particular story. But before they share, they go through these particular methods, right? Methods of creating. So thank you all for sharing. Another question that I want to ask, and I only have probably a couple questions after this, before you all share and give the audience just a glimpse of your talent, is when you think of your stories, and you kind of hit at it already, was how do your identity intersect with your stories? How do your identity intersect with your stories? You know, both of you all live in Detroit. How does living in Detroit impact Black womanhood impact? You talked about this ideal of, men sweat but women glisten. That was a beautiful phrase. So how do your identity intersect with your art of storytelling? And thinking of that, is there something that you are particularly known for? That this is like, oh, Ani, she does this. Mary, she does this. Do you have a signature as well?
Uh-oh. You turned Cheryl off. Well, I always talk about me as a child. My nickname was May May. So my signature, that's basically it. And whenever I tell stories, most of my stories are centered around that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Most of my stories are centered around that. And I don't know where they come from, but that's where they continue to grow. And once I have one story, then they grow and grow and grow. And so I can say that's my signature, telling stories about me as a child growing up.
Well, I have to agree with Mary. You always tell stories about what you know. And even if you are writing a story, you try to write about those things that you do know. And that makes it easier. And being a Detroiter has allowed me to see some history that many other places don't have. We've had the opportunity to have had several African-American mayors, and in particular, Coleman A. Young. And then we had the opportunity to see the effect that Coleman Young's administration had on the city, which was totally different from those other cities, whether it be Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, and et cetera. So yes, certainly that has had some impact on me, along with the fact that, just growing up and having, being in the South, that's had an impact. So you always bring who you are to your stories. And I've been told, I don't know if I have a signature or not, but I have often been told that I can be very animated. So I hope, and no one has told me that I should stop, but I hope that adds to the story. It doesn't take away from the story, because I want to invite people into the story, make them feel a part of the story. And that's really something that all storytellers try to do.
Thank you again. Some of the things that I heard was, we have a creative children, this particular idea that you're taking a character, Miss Mary, you bring this character all the way throughout all your stories. And this character is you, right? It's an aspect of you. So one of your signatures is that you're able to embody this character. And every time someone gets one of your books, they feel a little bit closer to you because of this creation. And Ms. Sheryl Pryor, your animation, even when you talked about, recreating family members, how you were perceived. So this idea to really get into character and show these characterizations is very important. And so these particular things are your signature. So thank you again for sharing. Another question. Another question that I have, yeah.
I just want to say, I started out also doing Sojourner Truth. And that was all I did for about 3 years. I did Sojourner Truth. The scary part about that is I feel as though I was Sojourner Truth. I feel as though Sojourner was with me while I was telling that story. And I was scared to tell anybody. I said, I'm doing Sojourner Truth. And I feel like Sojourner Truth. Emotionally, I get so engaged in that story. And my sister said, you look like her too. But I said, girl, I said, don't do that. But I mean, I'm just saying that storytelling, sometimes you lose yourself in your character. Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you for sharing. And I've definitely seen you play Sojourner Truth, and I definitely believe that you are. And I think it goes back to this particular ideal of your creative process, to be able to take a character and to really go deep down into that character story so that you can exude those particular emotions. So thank you for sharing that. In addition, there's going to be a period in this session where you share your story, but we have both of you all are part of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers. I know that some people who might be watching this are in Detroit and they're aspiring storytellers. So can you talk to us just a little bit about your experience with the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers and how they support you all and help grow you all, and the benefit of being a part of such organization?
Well, sure.
Wait.
Well, there you go.
It won't come. There we are. Okay. I can say that becoming a part of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers has allowed me to meet and see other people who have a common goal and common thread, and also to get some terrific feedback, as well as participate in various workshops, either done by members or having others who have been brought in. That has also given me something, well, it also has helped me become a better leader, because I have been in a leadership role, with the organization as well. And that helps you become better. And learning that, leading is active. It is not a passive activity, and it certainly is not authoritative. And that's important as well. And that's all part of, being a member of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers. And then I think you asked a question about, what do you tell, or why do you tell other people to become storytellers? Was that your other question, Tiffany?
Yeah, the idea of like the benefit of being a storyteller and being a part of such an organization like DABS.
Well, anytime you join an organization and you join hopefully either to have fun and to get better, or to get better first, or to have fun. So my goal and objective was to become better. And when you join organizations such as DABS or the National Association of Black Storytellers, that's the goal. And to be around people who have the same skill set or similar skill sets. And then, of course, you become more informed, you become more educated, and of course, you have fun.
But one thing that I like about Detroit, when I first joined, they were very encouraging. You tell a story. It's one thing to tell a story, but it's another for somebody to say, you did a good job. And, a member of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers called Amy. And whatever I did, Amy would say, wow, you really told that story? And I said, she was such a promoter, because I sure didn't know what I was doing. I just, what she would say, every time you tell a story, I just love it. I just love your story. So she gave me such encouragement. And I had Vicky. Vicky would mentor me. She would do this. And there were storytellers from the National Association of Black Storytellers. She gave me a book from, and I forgot her name. She was a heavyset lady. When I first joined, she gave me a book. And she said, read these stories. The lady was from down south, and she would tell stories. I can't think of the name right now. But I was mentored. And so she took time, and she said, well, And if she couldn't go on a storytelling assignment, she would let me go in her place. I like that because I wasn't sure, how to get into the market. And so she would encourage me and she'd let me go on her shows. And I said, wow, that's nice. And so that's why I say it's important for you to join a group or a group of people, it's like-minded people that support you. And that's why it's important that you work together in some sort of a partners group, whatever way that you can. But that's why I say if you're in Detroit, you should join the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers.
Thank you so much for those comments. And one of the things that both of you all discussed was this idea of support system. I know while I was there in Detroit, I really enjoyed the support that I received. And I really got some really great pointers on how to become a better storyteller, and to be cultivated by a group is so much better than trying to figure it out by yourself. So you're definitely right on this particular ideal of support. But I do want to encourage you all that, just because we are quarantined does not mean that DABS is not meeting. There are still things that you can do online that can put you into the group of other people who are doing storytelling and things of that nature. And towards the end, and also in the Black Meditations Facebook group page, I will share that particular information. The last thing I would like for you all to do is to share a story. Is there a short story that you all can share?
I have a really short one, and it's Anazi and his sons. Anazi and his wife, Azo, were expecting their first child. And as their child arrived, they were thinking about a name to give that child. And before they could give the name, the child spoke and said, I have a name. Huh? My name is Sea Trouble. The second son arrived, and he too followed the same path. He said, my name is Road Builder. Well, the other remaining sons followed that same path as well. There was River Drinker. There was Game Skinner. There was Stone Thrower. There was Cushion. Well, one day, as these sons were growing up, Anazi went off on a trip. And he had to make this journey. But on his way back home, he found a bright, shiny object. Oh, this looks beautiful. As he was walking along looking at the object, he fell right into the lake. And there was a big fish that was awaiting him and gulped him right in. As Anazi was inside the fish, he said, as soon as I'm saved, and hopefully I am, I will give this bright, shiny object to someone whomever saves me. Well, as time goes on, Anazi's family began to wonder where he was. And so Sea Trouble looked out into the forest and he found Anazi. Anazi was in the lake, at the bottom of the lake, inside a fish. And he quickly ran to tell his brothers. And Road Runner immediately got into action. And he built a road right through the forest. And as he got to the lake, River Drinker went into action. Drank up all of the water in the lake. And at the bottom was that big fish. It was Game Skinner's turn now. And out popped Anazi. And as Anazi was thinking about, who to help him, there was a huge bird that came down and swooped him up, took him high up into the air. And Stone Thrower looked back and he took a big rock and he threw it and hit the bird just right. And Anazi came floating down from the ground. Now, Anazi was concerned that he was not going to be able to live if he fell. But Cushion came to the rescue and broke the fall of Anazi. Anazi was now surrounded by his sons, and he was wondering, who should I give this bright, shiny object to? And he was pondering and pondering. And then he said, I'm going to go talk to the sky god, Nyani. And Nyani listened to Anazi tell his story. And Anani said, I'm going to place this bright, shiny object up into the sky. And guess what? That bright, shiny object is still in the sky today. So tonight, when you go outside, look up into the sky and you will see that bright, shiny object, because Anazi couldn't figure out which of his sons to give it to. The story is about teamwork. And we've been talking about collaboration, getting feedback. And the only way that you get better is because you allow yourself to participate in the team and to get that feedback and be great. Thank you.
Well, I like to tell stories. And my story is about my father, my daddy. I was about 8 or 9 years old. I said, hey, Daddy, what you doing? Come here, gal, and help me. And so he told me to pull that big old cinder block. I mean, if you know what a cinder block is and how big it is, I went over and acted as though I was going to pull it over, but I couldn't move it. That's all right, he said. He said, just take some of that cement, take that stick and just stir that cement up. So I stirred the cement up, took some cement, laid it on the brick with a trowel, and I laid it down. And he said, that's good. And then he grabbed the brick and he laid it over to the side. And then he took a plumb line, a big old string, and he pulled it up. And he did it in 4 places, which made a square. And he said, I'm building a foundation. Oh, I said, you building a foundation, Daddy? He said, yeah, I'm building a foundation. So I helped him build a foundation. He said, go get some water. I got him glasses of water, and all the workers, I would get them glasses of water too. I felt as though I was really helping. So as time went on, I helped my daddy build a foundation for our house. Well, as time passed and went through school, graduated from high school, I went to college. I had never been away from home before. I cried and I cried and I cried. But then he said, I'll be down there for your birthday. So he and my stepmother came down to college and brought me a big cake, some popcorn and some Kool-Aid. Oh, I was so happy because I just was so sad. I just didn't think I was going to make it. We sat down in the community room in the dormitory, and he told me that, remember that foundation we were building? He said, now this is your foundation. Now you're going to come down to this school and you're going to get an education. And he said, furthermore, you're not coming back home. You're going to stay down here. So my daddy told me I wasn't coming home. So I said, I guess I'm stuck here in this school. Took the cake upstairs. And if you've been to schools and colleges, when they see you coming with some food, they all came to my room acting like they wanted to celebrate my birthday. Girl, what you got? I said, my cake and popcorn and some Kool-Aid. Oh, it was just a group of people all in my room. They tried to be real friendly. I made some friends. And that's what my daddy had told me. Make some friends. Went on in life, graduated, got a job, and it was a big challenge because just wasn't ready for the kind of experiences I was having. I reflected back on my daddy telling me about a foundation. Be strong. Believe in yourself. That's your foundation, he used to always tell me. I thought about that, I made it. I continued on and working. Then when I retired, I thought back again on my foundation. I don't want to retire. But they say you should retire because you make more money retired than you do working. I said, well, let me go on and retire. My foundation, I thought, believe in yourself. I'm going to write these books. I know I can't write any books. This is not something I wanted to do. I wrote a book and published it. Really? Oh, I got another one. Published it. Another one. Oh, really? Another one? Okay, I'm going to be a publishing company. This time I'm going to put a book together and I'm going to publish it myself. Really? So when you have a foundation and talking to young people, I look back one day and I looked at myself and I became my daddy, telling people how they should live their life. How you got to believe in yourself. Be strong within yourself. You can do it. Just hope, keep the faith and keep moving on. And that's my story. Believe in yourself and you can do it.
Thank you, Ms. Sheryl Pryor and Ms. Mary Grant, for those beautiful stories that you all have shared. And what I love is that they are rooted in a moral, right? It's rooted in motivation. It's a way for us to learn something. And some of the things that you talked about was teamwork, right? The importance of having teamwork, which goes back to this point of if you are a part of a group, you become stronger. Also, this ideal of building a foundation and being strong, and as well, believing in yourself, and how this particular ideal of believing in yourself carried you all the way to what you are now, a educator as well as a wonderful storyteller. So thank you all for sharing that. We are almost finished with our meeting, but we have people who are on the Zoom call, and we also have people who are watching this via Facebook Live. So I would like to give people a chance to ask questions. I'm first going to ask the participants in Facebook Zoom if you all have any questions, if you all will share them. You can just pop in and ask those questions. If you have a comment, you can just pop in and ask those questions. While the participants who are in Facebook Zoom are asking their questions or sharing their comments, I'll be checking the Facebook Live to see if there are anything that I need to share.
Can I just say this? Our president, Janice Green, just told me the storyteller was Jackie Torrance. That's the book. I got 2 of her books. And she's passed away now, but that's who the storyteller was that Vicki had given me the book. Wonderful person to read, book to read, Jackie Torrance. So we're ready for the questions, right?
Well, I don't have a question, but I just want to congratulate Mary and Sheryl on such a wonderful program. I am proud to be the president of the National Association of Black Storytellers. And Detroit, Dabs, you are superior. We are so proud to have you as one of our 15 affiliates. And Mary and I had a long conversation at the last festival about what I got to know her better. First in the bookstore, and then as we waited in the airport. And I had not had that private conversation with Mary before. And it was so good to get to know you better and understand all that you do. And I'll be purchasing another one of your books too. But we are so proud of both of you and the National Association of Black Storytellers. In case you don't know, and Maxine is here, and Festival Director Darlene Pritchett, and our Executive Director Lenora Lego are both here. And we are to congratulate you. Tiffany, you did a fine job as MC, and we hope to see you in Richmond, Virginia in November at our National 38th Festival and Conference coming up. And go to our website, nabsinc.org, to find out more information. And congratulations again. Great stories coming from great storytellers.
And Tiffany, you didn't tell them where you were living now. I'm sorry.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am currently right now in the South. I'm in New Iberia, Louisiana.
Right.
My father's side of the family stays here. Mm-hmm. So for my summer, I am spending time with my family here. So, but I'm very connected to Detroit Association of Black Storytellers. And I think that even here, just being a part of this wonderful Zoom conference call shows me that this ideal of support and encouragement that you get when you're a part of a group. So I'm so much more inspired to participate on the different online events that DABS have. So yes, that's where I'm at. I'm in Louisiana.
Okay. Lenore is from Louisiana too.
Yeah, and my family is from Louisiana as well. And some of my stories are about my time I spent in Louisiana.
Yeah, Maxine from Lansing, Michigan, actually, and I have to leave shortly. I want to echo what has been already said about Sheryl and Mary, two outstanding storytellers. But my question to both of you is, considering the things that are happening today with the social unrest and COVID-19, all of the injustices that are happening in society today, has either of you thought about trying to capture in either a book form or a storytelling format to try to capture all of this chaos and turbulence that's happening today?
Actually, Maxine, I haven't finished it yet, and it's a story that I'm going to tell. And I have to admit, I'm inspired by the protesters, those young adults who are out there, as well as I have been listening to podcasts and probably Zoom and et cetera, where these young adults are sharing their stories, and I'm listening to them. And that's been motivating as well. So it is something that is heavily on my mind that I am working on. And you're right, we do have to record it in some way, shape, or form. And if I don't, if I can't do anything else, I would love to share some of the stories or some of the poems, because there's been poetry, that has been written by those protesters, and what they see, what they hear, what they're feeling. And then that comparison to, excuse me, and I'm going back a little bit, back to the 60s and et cetera. And, what I felt during that time. And, even though my parents were very concerned that I was out there, and sometimes I'd have to sneak away. And so I never really got to tell them anything about what I was doing. So that's a story in itself as well.
When last year for 400 years, when we talked about 400 years, I talked about that in a conference. This year, we're having a conference again in my social justice group. And to tell about Breonna Taylor, I want to say their names because George Ford and Ahmaud Arbery, the struggle of our people. Yes, I have a story, and when I'm with people, the story comes out. You know how storytellers are. You get them in a group and they start talking, long-winded. You know how storytellers, that's what they do. So the opportunity to tell a story is when I'm in a group of people who have like minds as mine, who will listen to me tell my story. So I haven't really organized it yet, but as soon as we can figure out, I'm not going to say when we figure out when we can all come together, because I'm not sure about that. But as soon as I get put pencil to paper, my mind starts clicking, and I have a story pretty soon.
Good. Thank you.
I wanted to say
you will too.
One other thing was that, and Mary just mentioned it, with the Social Justice Conference, which I'm a part of as well, and I'm the essay chair. So I have decided that the children are going to write about their experiences. I'm not going to give you the title or anything, but I think it's important that they have some kind of outlet to tell their story and how they feel and what they see and heard. And maybe even they might have some suggestions as to what can be done better. So I'm looking forward to reading those stories as well. And I think that's probably going to add to, whatever I come up with in the end.
And Miss Maxine Kane, I also want to say that I wrote a story on police brutality called "Where's Bobby," and it's about this boy who basically he gets killed by a police, and it documents this ideal of a family who is longing for their son or brother. And so that was kind of like my contribution and I wrote this years ago when Trayvon Martin has passed away. I think it's very important that the stories document what's going on in the world. Sometimes I get a couple of people say, oh, this is too rough, this is too hard. But we have to understand that in our Black communities, we have babies who are seeing these things, and we have to have a platform in which to reach them. And I think there's no better way than a story.
Okay, I have to leave now, but I would love a copy of your book. But I shall return if you guys are still here.
Oh.
Okay. Take care, Maxine.
Okay then, love you guys dearly. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
We have Chris down there too. And I think that's Gwen on the phone. Is that you, Gwen? Someone's on the telephone right there. I was just trying to see who that was. I mean,
Tiffany? This is Dylan. I just have, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have two things. First of all, wonderful, y'all, Cheryl and Mary and Tiffany, and thank you for the time. The first thing I wanted to say is that this is nothing new, that our struggle is not new. It has just come to a head. And I think that any story that we tell, we should let the youth know that this is an ongoing struggle. And this is just, because of the times and technology, we see it more often, we hear it more often. We can even go back a couple of months and see that it was going on somewhere else. So it's the times. But in this volume, I believe all of these turmoils have always happened. There has been these deaths and chokeholds and things that happen. No filming going on, but it happened and gets up under the rug. So I think it's important that the youth know that this is our struggle that we have struggled with, and kudos to them for continuing the struggle. This ain't nothing new that they're starting, but it's something new that they're noticing and beginning to truly understand, and the world understand. The second thing, I heard about dabs, and I got a dab story you probably don't know. It's not a story, but as a festival director, when we were in Hampton, we wanted to use Hampton University's Ogden Hall. Now, I went to Hampton. Ogden Hall is where everybody who is somebody will perform or have a speech. And everybody didn't get into Ogden Hall, but we wanted to use Ogden Hall, NABS did. But you had to have a sponsor, and you had to have an internal organization to get it. And we didn't have that. But the lady that I talked to, when I went to talk to her about Ogden Hall, I mentioned NABS. She said, oh. And then I kept talking and then let her know what the request was. She called me back the next day and she said, oh, she said, my father was one of the first members in DABS. I said, really? She said, yes. She said, he's in a nursing home now. And I said, really? And I wrote his name down. And she said, yes. She said, I have heard so many stories about DABS. I have heard a lot of stories about the festivals when y'all first started. And then about a day or two later, she said she called her father and told her about it. And he said, well, you're going to help him, right? And so the use of Ogden Hall saved NABS about $5,000. It was an expensive venue, and all we had to do was give a donation. And so we signed that piece of paper real quick. But the thing about it is, when you're speaking of connections and how to be connected, those tentacles go wide, and you never know where it will end up. And you don't know who you're impacting, what not only the members of DABS, but the families and the family members, because they go places. And it's that the power of storytelling, they understand. And that's basically what she said was, I know what you do because my father, would talk about it. So she said, there you go. So DABS is a wonderful organization. It's a great organization. But the connectiveness that happens goes further than what you might think. So congratulations, and enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dylan.
I'd like to say something before we leave. I am newer members of DABS, and I sat at the table with Sheryl and Mary. And as a new member, one thing, I was a writer. I came in as a writer, and people were interested in the stories. And I have a different genre. I'm inspirational. But one thing I want to say about this, you can't, like they were saying, you bring who you are to the table when you are a storyteller. And one thing I appreciate about Dabs and Mary and Sheryl in particular is because when I first came and life began to happen and I couldn't come back again, it was Mary who, when I first came, the very first time, who was encouraging. She said, "Oh, you do that. And your name, my name is a long name." She said, "Oh, with that name, you got plenty of stories." And they invited me and told me to tell those stories. And then Sheryl, with her cake making, we won't go there, but it's like, it's just like they're inspirational. You sit at the table with them. And I went back to school at an old age. Yes, I did, to get a master's, and it's killing me. But they keep reaching out. They keep a platform there where you can. And one thing about a writer and a storyteller, it's gonna come out. Like Mary was saying, if you're in the room, you're gonna start talking. But I appreciate this platform because in this time with COVID, even with the school that I go to, you had to have different resources to reach to the people because you couldn't just stop. So I thank Dabs for being that platform that they keep something going, and that it's like with the individuals, you draw something from each one. Sheryl has a strength and Mary has a strength, but they engage with us, the newer people, and they bring us on, and they always tell us about NABs and different things. And I appreciate that. And all of you who are here, it's encouraging because I was raised by two Black people from the South. And they taught me to be strong, independent, know who I am, know where I came from. There's no shame nor fear, but you got to be wise in what you do. And I was a hothead child. Yes, I was. And it was the writing down of my feelings and emotions that got me under control, in a sense, and a lot of prayer from all my family. But it's that platform that Dabs has added on to, because you never get away from needing that kind of encouragement. So I want to thank them for that. You, Tiffany, as well, for today, and everyone else, the platforms that you are on and what you are doing to the new people like me who are coming on the scene. I just wanted to say thank you. And I enjoyed these stories and I enjoyed this time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I love this idea of legacy. We're talking about legacy, connection, building, and inspiring. We're pretty much done, but I did want to give the ground to Miss Mary Grant and Miss Sheryl Pryor to just say one more thing. If you wanted to, is there anything else you want to tell to the audience and the other DABS members here before we leave?
I just want to leave with an African proverb. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'll say with a story. That's an African proverb. That's all I have to say. True.
Well, my thing is to come out, join DABS or NABS, and we want to continue that. I know that we are maturing and we need to reach out to more people to bring them in. So if anyone's listening, whether it's on Facebook and etc., come on out, try it. If you don't do anything else, I'm sure you'll have a good time and laugh. So please come out and join us, and I hope to see you or hear from you soon.
And one more thing, my new book, The Great Migration. I did the workshop at the National Association of Black Storytellers. It inspired me. I have a book coming out in August the 1st, The Great Migration, the Johnson family in the Great Migration. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you for all the participants, the people on Facebook Live. Thank you so much. And the participants in Zoom. I'm sending just a whole lot of thanks to Miss Sheryl Pryor, Miss Mary Grant for being the first two brave souls to be a part of this Black Meditations. And I believe that we're on to something big with the storytelling section. I believe that what I'm going to do is probably every month have two storytellers interview two storytellers to share their stories and their legacy within the art of storytelling. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sending everyone love, peace, and happiness and good health during this particular time. And I'm going to leave with Ashe, and I will talk to you all soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job. Thanks, Larry.